All right, everyone, let's get the show started. Welcome to our DevOps office hours. It's December 29th, 2021. My name is Eric Osterman, and I'll be leading the conversation. I'm the founder and CEO of Cloud Posse. We're a DevOps accelerator, and that means that we help companies own their infrastructure in record time by building it together with your team and showing them the ropes. So if that sounds interesting, head over to cloudposse.com/quiz to get started. Again, that's cloudposse.com/quiz to get started. For those of you new to the call, the format is very informal. My goal is to get your questions answered. So feel free to unmute yourself at any time if you want to jump in and participate. If you're tuning in from our podcast or YouTube channel, you can register for these live and interactive sessions by going to cloudposse.com/officehours. We host these calls every week. Our call today is recorded. We'll automatically post a video recording of this session to our YouTube channel. So if you enjoy the content and want to support it, please hit those like and subscribe buttons. Just head over to youtube.com/cloudposse. And don't forget to share these videos with your team if you want to share, some of the things that you learned from these calls. So with that said, let's kick it off. The only announcement I have, it's been such a slow news cycle, is Happy New Year's. Anybody else have anything else to mention? Vlad, you're always staying on the cutting edge. You must have something.
No.
No?
I don't know. It is weird.
Well, I guess I'm not alone then in feeling no news this week. So let's just jump right into questions then. There was one question in our channel posted that was by Chris. Is that you, Chris Dutton? Oops, where did it go? Where is it? There it is. Best practice for cold start. Was that from you, Chris Dutton?
Yes, it was.
Awesome. All right. Well, try and do the best answer for that that I can. The long and short of it is, you're right that the former Cloud Posse repo here, reference architectures, is archived and deprecated. This was never fully really updated to the most recent version, and we haven't been able to commit to maintaining an open source version of a fully working reference architecture. So what we do have are two other things that you might have already seen. So if you go over to tutorials, we have some tutorials that are relatively up to date that we released around the summertime. They have an example for, a very basic example of setting up your first environment on AWS using stacks, and some example stack configurations and how we organize things. So like a dev stack, a production stack, and root being the top level account, has an example of how to use imports and overriding the variables and so forth. The corresponding documentation for this is if you go over to docs.cloudposse.com, you go to tutorials, and it's your first environment on AWS. And this is the guide there. Now, this is quite different from the scope of which we engage with our customers. For our internal customer documentation, which isn't open sourced, it's broken down into much more comprehensive guides, including guides on more detailed guides on how we use Terraform, how we use Atmos, and all the configuration for that. This documentation will percolate out towards the open source, but we're focused predominantly on defining the documentation for the solution as a whole. And so that's what we follow, these guides here that we have internally, which is how to implement the AWS cold start, which goes through the entire cold start process that we execute step by step with our customers. So there's quite a lot there, quite a lot to it, but we don't have anything more than that right now. Well, we do have updated relatively recently, but still it's a labor of love that we haven't fully committed to but my plan is for early this year, 2022, that we are going to release like a Cloud Posse registry with all of our components. So if we go to components here, components are top level root modules in Terraform speak. These are example implementations that come from our actual paid engagements of how we implement these various pieces using our open source modules. If I jump in here to like EKS, you can take a look at it. This component is built on our EKS cluster module, but this is the implementation of the EKS cluster itself and how we deliver it to our customers. Unfortunately, some of these components are out of date. You'll see this one hasn't been updated for over a year, yet we use it every single day and have lots of updates. So you'll see some of those updates will be in pull requests here. Some of them are going to be in branches, but keeping them up to date is a top priority for us starting in the new year here. We have acquired the AWS organization that we're going to use for running the automated tests against our reference architecture. And that's the blocker for us to really release all these components because we didn't have proper testing for components. Any other specific questions I can get to, Chris?
No, I think that does it. I think the biggest part is that I need to dive in on is, how in the reference architecture, it's the master and members and the association, then you can switch between your accounts, if you're the admin, obviously, not just a regular user. So that's the part I think that's missing the most for me, but I can.
Yeah, so in our approach to this, so it used to be very much, if you've been following Cloud Posse for a long time, our approach has really evolved as we've learned more and grown as a company. If you looked at how we were doing things 3 years ago, it was very much about assume this role, run these Terraform commands. And it was even beyond that. It was like, build this container for this account, run that container, go into this directory, change your role to this Amazon role, run this Terraform command, load a bunch of settings from a .m file. But we've grown, and there were a lot of problems with that old approach. So in that old approach, first of all, it wasn't very GitOps friendly. And one of the problems was like the concept of like CD and Durham, that's like console driven development. That's not GitOps. So we gave up on taking that approach. And this idea of assuming a role as a human operator, well, that's actually a configuration setting. That shouldn't be something that's documented. That should be something that the Terraform automatically knows what role to use in order to perform these operations. So this is why in all of our components, the components themselves are aware of the IAM role that they should use. So the provider here, if you look at our provider block, they'll have something like this, which takes either an override for the profile you want to use, or it looks up the profile to use as an output from another module here, in this case, IAM roles. So what we've tried to do is make the Terraform smarter, so it always knows what role it should be using in order to apply a given component.
Okay, thank you. That helps a lot.
All right, and then the last thing is that we then have invested a lot in Atmos, and then Atmos is the tool that we're using for defining the configurations, and they're broken down like this, into stacks and components and Terraform components, and then the stack configurations are the actual definition of all the root modules you want in an account environment in a given region. And that's what you'll find in this tutorial. Is it goes over, are you using geodesic, Chris?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, cool. So it goes over how, like, from geodesic, then you'd run Atmos, Terraform, plan, and the component name and the stack which is the configuration. So you don't need to change roles explicitly. Terraform does it for you. It's not something Atmos does, because all Atmos does is call Terraform.
Okay, thank you.
Sure thing. And yeah, feel free to post more questions in the Geodesic channel if you have any other thing that's come up. All right, there was one other question. Who was it when we first started the call? Was that Jack? All right, I need to see the members here.
Yeah, it was me. Thank you.
Hey, Jack.
My name is Jack. Hello, how are you? It's been a time that I'm following your channel and your YouTube channel and the GitHub repository, and I would like to ask you a little bit about how to organize Terraform modules, whether to use them by functionality, by type, by cloud provider. What kind of methodology do you suggest in order to organize Terraform modules in our organization, at least in large enterprise?
Yeah, that's a really good question. The answer is we've tried a few different ways, and I wouldn't say there's a black and white way you're going to want to organize it. For example, you might want to organize it by provider. Yet, if you're working with integrations, then it gets a little bit murky which provider is the primary provider. I guess if you're making that integrate, for example, let's talk about Datadog. If you're working with Datadog and AWS, where does a component that sets up a Datadog integration with AWS belong? Well, then I would argue it probably still belongs in the AWS directory structure. What I would avoid, well, one of the things that we think about a little bit differently here, and I'm going to jump over back here to GitHub, is when you think about all of your components. So these are our components for AWS, and you can think of them as root modules. We have them all organized here in a flat directory structure, not broken out by any specific, well, because the provider is frankly, for the most part, AWS and maybe one other provider like Datadog or something like that. We have a flat directory structure here, not broken out by regions, not broken out by accounts or any other stage or environments like that, because all of that is configuration. So when you organize your root modules, we, for the most part, keep them flat today. However, what I expect that we will start doing this year is to start breaking them down by some logical grouping, like what they relate to. So for example, I expect we're going to have an EKS folder, and everything that relates to EKS will be in that folder. I don't think we're going to do it in a programmatic fashion, if that makes sense, where it's programmatically deterministic exactly where you would put some component based on the resource name. I think we will group them based on some logical organization that we have at Cloud Posse. I would avoid.
Just a question.
Yep, go on.
And are you going to organize, for example, that all of them will work with the same type or input architecture? It means they are all going to accept the same type of provider, whether it would be AWS, so it means with the same, whether it would be a profile or a role arena or whatever, or every type of module accepting different kind of provider or different kind sets of inputs, if you understand my question.
Yeah, the only commitment or the only contract we have in that is that every one of our modules has our context interface. So this is that they all accept these variables by as a standard.
In order to integrate with the Atmos?
No, well, I mean, we definitely leverage it in Atmos. It's not an Atmos requirement. This is a null label requirement. So, we use null label in all of our modules to come up with consistent resource names. And then the way we do that is we copy in this file. We're calling this a mixin in our current terminology. So this mixin of context.tf is copied into every one of our components, every one of our modules, and that ensures that we have the same settings available in every one of our modules at a baseline of settings available. So how we do tags, how we construct resources, how we define environments, tenants, and all of that stuff. But in terms of the provider, well, if you're using our components here, and if we kind of flash forward to end of January, maybe end of February, when we can hopefully have our components fully upstreamed again. The other contract is the way our AWS components work is that they always have a role ARN that works something like this. It's something we support profiles and role ARNs, and that's the common way of defining the connection information for AWS in all of our components. Now, some of these, if I jump over here to like our EKS component, and now let's see if this one has, this is an older version, I think, that might not have our Spot IO integration. Let me see if we have one for Datadog integration here. So here's an integration for Datadog. It will have a provider for two things. It's going to have a provider for Datadog, and it's going to have a provider for AWS. And in our situation, our solution is the Datadog API keys are stashed in SSM, and then we use AWS to
retrieve them.
Exactly, you got it. And then you'll see consistency here. Now, I will say this is the older way we express this. If I jump over into one of our components updated more recently, like maybe the cert manager one, and providers, and here's what our like current best practice is for the AWS provider.
This dynamic is a new feature of Terraform, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a new feature as of, I forget when these, was that, I don't know when the dynamic blocks were released anymore that work on the provider block. Maybe it was 13, 14, 15, or 1.0.
Yes, it's completely recent.
Yeah. So this works well. My bet is that we'll probably end up moving this into something like a mix-in as well. So that we can standardize how we deliver it. So we're introducing mix-ins for security groups, for context, and probably for providers. And there'll be more. Our mix-ins for this are also going to be published so that we can help establish more standardization in Terraform.
Excellent. I think that this context switch is definitely like you doing in CSS. When you would like to apply different kind of complete methodology on all your modules, and it makes a common base for everything. Yeah. I like it very much.
And everything that works, clicks together like Legos. You can sometimes, like, you want to have 4 EKS clusters. If you weren't using this strategy like ours, chances are you get resource conflicts based on the names. But since you
Yes, I had it. Yeah.
So with this pattern, we were able to optimistically avoid those kinds of situations. So. Thank
you.
Sure thing. Let's see here. I'm going to jump over into the chat. Vlad posted. Vlad said there is a reinvent. There is one announcement that the videos from reInvent are now on YouTube. I don't know when they published that, but I don't think we announced it. So just as well, if you have the link handy for that, Vlad, we can share that. That'd be cool. All right, I'm going to jump over into Slack. And let's see here. We got to Chris's question, and we got to the Jack's question. We're out of questions. Anyone else have any other questions today?
Hi, this is Ralph.
Hey, Ralph.
I think you ended up taking a job that I had at some point when I went off on paternity leave sometime in the past. I kind of remember your name. But
Interesting.
regardless, I was very happy to find this bunch of modules that were kind of cohesive amongst each other in that you could use them together. Because I think about 2 years ago, I was like looking for some pre-made solution to do an AWS build out, and I find a whole bunch of modules that didn't fit together, as you say.
Yeah, that's the common problem.
Yeah, like you seem to have written a very nice cohesive open sourced bit.
Thank you.
I keep telling myself I want to run a demo of this, and I generally get busy otherwise and don't get around to doing it. But just wanted to say, hey, kudos for sharing and thank you. And I'm considering joining you guys possibly.
Awesome. Well, definitely reach out. Andy, who's on the call here, is always fielding any interest in working with Cloud Posse. We're always bringing people on board. So would look forward to talking with you, Ralph.
So as to an actual question,
Yeah.
I'd love to see a demo sometime, like, hey, we're going to build this, and, just, and maybe this is not the meeting because, yeah, it's already half done possibly, but I'd love to see that live demo of, hey, I'm going to build something, and then kind of see it expand.
Yeah, and this is open actually for everyone. And the best way for anyone here to get a demo, a live demo of what we do, kind of behind this, behind the curtains of how it all operates, you can just head over to cloudposse.com/quiz and fill out that. It's just some initial scoping information, and at the end of taking that quiz, you'll get a booking confirmation page that will enable you to book some time. You'll talk with me directly, and I'll show you exactly what this stuff looks like in action.
Cool.
Also, I am hoping that 2022 is the year we are able to provide a little bit more of a guide for non-paid engagements for how to get started on our stack. I'll be honest, our priority has been for our paid engagements, but we do want
Gotta pay the rent.
We do want, exactly. That's what pays for us to manage these 190 GitHub repositories for Terraform that we have today. But that said, I do want to pay it forward. It is our goal to get as many people onto the rails and do it the way we do it. It's proven a very effective strategy. We've evolved now over many years, and it's only in the last year, I would say, it's really feel like it started to click the way I always wanted it to. And that's
it's taken me some time to discover the fact that Terraform has modules. And I mean, I've been in Terraform for a long time, and obviously I don't keep up with their releases as I should, because different engagements use different tools, and I'm not always using Terraform. But I think I was heavily into Terraform 11.11. I keep forgetting. I keep forgetting the dot.
It's almost like a different product at this point. Like you couldn't do half the things we can do today in Terraform.
So that was kind of my trial by fire where I really got into it. Then I noticed that .12 had a whole bunch of improvements, and I really welcomed them. And I haven't kept up since, to be honest with you. It's kind of slid out of my radar. I got a little bit more into the Kubernetes and GCP aspect of things. There's always something new to learn.
It is. It's really hard to stay on top of it all. Thanks. Yeah, it is. Thanks, Vlad, for sharing those videos to reInvent, by the way. If you weren't able to attend reInvent, do check out those videos. Are there any other questions, announcements, interesting notifications? it's a pretty slow news cycle here. So I fully understand if we're going to end up ending office hours early today.
I have a quick question, more of a general question around Terraform and providers. So I haven't done this yet, but I've seen sometimes there's community providers where some of them have good support, some of them don't. I haven't tried, I don't know much Golang at the moment, but I've been going back and forth on the idea of writing a provider of my own for things that don't have a provider yet, mostly some database technologies that I use in my day-to-day that basically I don't have a solution at all. And I was going back and forth on what the effort level might be. And I was curious to know if anyone here has done it before and is it a lot of effort? Like, I don't want to, I guess, go down this rabbit hole and realize I need a team of 10 people to maintain a provider now. And wasn't sure if anyone here has done it before that could chime in.
I just want to, before we answer your question, I just have to say, or I laugh a little bit and okay, so I don't want to dissuade you or discourage you from writing your own provider. You should by all means go and write your own provider. We've started maintaining our own provider as well. However, it seems like they're too common. I want to learn Golang projects. I'm going to write a Kubernetes operator that implements this thing I always wanted to do. And I'm going to write, like, I'm going to run Terraform in Kubernetes. Or two, I'm going to write a Terraform provider to call, AKA, like, or sorry, for example, to call the Domino's Pizza API or something like that, which is fun. So you'll find a landscape littered with weekend projects of all these providers that have like one commit and never seen the light of day after that. So just be forewarned. I think there's two reasons you might be writing your own provider. One is because you wanted the learning exercise. That's great. Just make sure you say that in the README. Two is that you're actually solving a business need that no one else can provide. And this is the key here. So Terraform is a pretty crappy language for performing any sort of complex operations aside from create, update, delete, destroy. And if you want to do that in a strategic manner, for example, blue-green upgrades of an EKS cluster, it's almost impossible because the Terraform is so primitive. It's like taking a sledgehammer out and like, all right, we're going to destroy the Kubernetes cluster, then we're going to build a new one and we're going to flip the DNS. And that's not really, how you would maybe orchestrate it as a human. This is where operators, of course, come in. And this is where you implement the business logic the same way that you would as a Kubernetes operator. So one example of that where we've had to solve recently is how do you rotate IAM keys every 90 days automatically? Well, automatically every time you would run Terraform. And we went down a rabbit hole of trying to use the new time rotate data source, time rotating data source in Terraform together with like the IAM key or access key, whatever it is, resource. But it turns out there's no attributes on the IAM key that we can use to cause this resource to trigger and create a new one. So that's why we've been starting to maintain the Cloud Posse's own Terraform provider for this. Now, I don't know what your provider was that you wanted to develop.
Yeah, we work with quite a few database technologies. One in particular is ScyllaDB. And then
okay.
Scylla directly, I'm like, hey, do you guys have any IAC tools? That wasn't a great conversation to have with them, but it's missing, they're missing tooling at the moment. And they're working on some things, but it creates a headache for operations folks like myself, at least on my team, where we've got a bunch of users using ScyllaDB, but we don't have guardrails in place. And so having that, having some of the benefits of Git operations and using Terraform, it doesn't necessarily have to be Terraform. We just already happen to use it. I love it. I don't see any reason to not use it. But the last thing you want to do is start writing something that's going to be a huge headache to maintain long term. And like I said, I have no experience writing providers. I usually just consume what you folks have built as well as what other people have built. So yeah.
So There's like a I forget what you call it, a template repo that HashiCorp provides for the boilerplate to get started writing your own provider. Looks like Vlad has something he wants to add here. I'll pass it over to him in a second. That's what we did for one of our providers. The other provider was the one we did for AWS Utils, which we based off of the official provider and then ripped everything out that we didn't want, so we could keep the same interface. That said, Vlad, what do you want to add?
Oops, I was just typing in chat how this is not urgent, and I just raised a hand, so I don't forget. One other thing I would mention here is that I've seen a bunch of companies adopt open source Terraform plugins. So company X doesn't have a Terraform provider. Somebody, a user of that company, starts a Terraform provider. It gets somewhat popular. It's somewhat stable. People are happy with it. And after, I don't know, half a year, the company matures and they actually adopt that provider and start working on it internally. So it might be worth starting those types of discussions.
Yeah, cool. That's good to know. Cool. Yeah, I've also seen the opposite, where I think it was Confluent has their provider for Confluent Cloud. Someone wrote a provider before they released theirs, and then Confluent just decided to create their own, and they've got a little bit of fragmentation. And the other, I mean, I'm okay with switching. It's just what's going to be, as a consumer, it's easy for me to just switch. Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up, Vlad. Thank you. Yeah, a lot of my hesitation just been around, yeah, I mean, in theory, if the APIs are stable, I guess things will just work. I guess the APIs from AWS or still are probably going to be stable to a certain degree. Terraform is also pretty fast moving, so I wasn't too sure as the new versions come out if there's a lot of overhead as a provider maintainer, or if it's smooth sailing as it is as a consumer, where you just upgrade to the next version of Terraform at this point. For the most part, it just works.
We've only been doing it for about maybe 8 months so far, and it hasn't been that painful. However, there was one painful thing, because like our AWS Utils module is based off of the official AWS, I said module, I meant provider, because our AWS Utils provider is based off the official AWS provider. Turns out they did a massive refactor a few months ago. So we had to then refactor all of our resources as well. But that's a unique case where we're basing it off of another provider. If you have your own provider, you're not going to have that. The other thing to consider, and I don't think it's going to be a consideration for what you're doing with the databases, but there is a, was it MasterCard or somebody, they have a REST API provider.
I have seen that. I have not used it yet, but I know exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, this is the MasterCard one here. And we've dabbled with it, but it assumes that the API, so it doesn't work with just any RESTful API. The RESTful API has to follow exactly the convention that they expect here, with post and put and get verbs and things like that. So your mileage may vary on that too. Looks like Jenkins, you have something to add?
Actually, that was for the next topic. So I'll just stand by.
All right, stand by.
Yeah.
So Venkata, I think you should just try it. If for no other reason, to see what the power is that you can do with it. What's also nice about it is some of the extreme hacks that you have to do to get around deficiencies in Terraform become a lot easier depending on what they are if you're using Golang. In our case, we were trying to do deep merging of YAML, and we did this, the first implementation in pure HCL. Some of our plans were taking an hour and like 20 minutes to do just the compilation of the Terraform graph itself. The DAG was taking an hour and 20 minutes. We moved that into Go, and now suddenly, it's taking 1 second to do the same thing. So yeah.
Cool. Worst case, you learn something, but yeah.
Yeah, that's the worst case.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, Michael, you have a question?
No, I just wanted to add, as far as announcements go, that the call for proposals for HashiTalks
All right.
2022 is open. So if anybody has anything novel or new or cool that they might want to share in a presentation for HashiTalks, then now's your opportunity. Deadline is February 17th.
Very cool. Yeah, I've been meaning to submit a proposal for that, and I always get hung up on what to talk about.
Yeah, right. That's the key. So maybe brainstorm for a couple of weeks and then put your proposal in. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool.
Benefit for this one is it's virtual, so it's all online and everything.
Yeah. That's convenient. Anybody submit their paper? Anybody planning to talk at HashiConf this year? Or HashiTalks, I guess, the HashiTalks Conf.
Would Pulumi be a acceptable topic there?
Well,
Hey,
maybe, yeah, maybe Pulumi with Terraform.
Yeah, because you can call or reference Terraform state from Pulumi, if I'm not mistaken. So if there was some sort of novel thing that you were doing, maybe switching, no, maybe not even switching, but say you have some stack that's built in Terraform and you want to reference some data over there in your Pulumi stack, yeah, that might be a novel discussion.
And I think this is a really interesting thing, is that the future of IAC is going to look a lot more like the future of web development or server-side development, et cetera, which is a landscape of tools and languages. So I think pigeonholing ourselves that, hey, these days you wouldn't hear a company say, hey, we're Python shop, we only write Python. No, they're doing React, and they're doing TypeScript, and they're doing all types of other things. All right, any other questions or talking points?
And you guys going to Scale?
Oh, Scale. Man, I left Pasadena in May. I moved out of California, so I'm not going to be going this year. I used to be walking distance from my my old pad in Pasadena.
Yeah, I used to be in El Segundo, and I could take the beach bus for $1.
Yeah, I remember when it was in El Segundo as well,
which was awesome.
Yeah, it won't be going to ScaleConf. Anyone going to Scale? Who's here based in Los Angeles?
I'm not.
Okay, where are you based?
I'm in Mountain View.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm in South Bay of LA, so it's a good place to be.
Yeah. So they are having Scale in person this year?
I haven't checked yet. I've really enjoyed going to it. I've probably missed the last, I know I missed the last one. I'm trying to think if I missed the last two. But yeah, when it was in hotels near LAX, it was always a good time because I worked, off of like El Segundo Boulevard, and I could, cruise up there, hang out for a couple hours, and then get back to work. Pasadena is a little tougher for me to get to, but still, not impossible.
Pasadena might be easier for us expats because I would imagine that the airport next to it is cheaper to fly to.
Oh, it depends. I mean, Burbank is going to be the closer airport for Pasadena.
Yeah.
And because it's not, the, prime hub that LAX is, you might pay a little bit more of a premium to fly into Burbank.
Yeah.
So you might be better off just flying to LAX. And
I think it's actually the opposite. I think more likely you're going to find a cheap flight to Pasadena. I mean, to Burbank.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the airline. Southwest for sure. That's one of their hubs. Yeah, it just depends on where you're coming from.
Yeah, I'll have to say I've never lucked out getting a cheaper flight in. I always want to go to Burbank because it's so convenient to fly in and out of. It feels like a small regional airport, but I never can get the time or the flight or the connections that I want. So
I know what you mean, because when I had to fly to LAX every month, I would choose San Jose, just avoid San Francisco, because smaller airports are nicer.
They are. I like it. Are there any other interesting questions or announcements related to?
Is there a video up with a demo of your stack?
You know, I don't think there is a comprehensive video up of anything, mostly just because every demo, you know, we don't have a appropriate demo environment that we can use for recorded sessions like that. So that's one of our plans, is to have a demo environment up for that.
So they're mostly just customer engagements that you're showing this to?
Yeah,
Okay.
only for customer engagements. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah. All right. Well, maybe we have to end office hours a little bit early. I wish everyone a happy New Year's and good continuation. We've had, I think, 52 segments of office hours this year. We haven't missed a single one, barring technical glitches. Next year is going to be more of the same. We're going to keep the time slot, another 52 sessions with this occasional guest speaker on the call. I was talking with some people who participated in last year's Tacos demo, the Terraform automation and collaboration software. That was one of our most popular segments. We did that last December. We're probably going to try one again, I think, come here January or February, see where the different providers are at. We're talking like Spacelift, Scalar, Terraform Cloud, M0, and maybe there's some new participants. I think we'll mix up the format a little bit. It was a bit aggressive last time, giving everyone only 10 minutes to present. But yeah, look forward to that next year. Other things to look forward to from Cloud Posse is going to be, like I was mentioning earlier, a refreshed component catalog coming out. Probably some more documentation to go along with that. Those would be the major things to look out for from us. There are a bunch of other things going on behind the scenes that we're looking to expand in different areas, but I can't talk publicly about those yet. So thanks everyone for your commitment and participation. You've been amazing this year. I really love having this community. It's what keeps me going, having this constant feedback loop of what we're doing and what's working and how I stay on the bleeding edge of everything going on. I learned so much from these office hour sessions. So thank you, and see you all next year.
Woo! Thank you, Eric, for organizing all these.
Thank you, Vlad. Really appreciate all your insights that you bring to these calls. You're definitely one of our most valuable.
Happy New Year.
Thank you, Jack. Wish you see you around next year on some more office hours, maybe.
Definitely.
Oh, sorry, Zaid, I didn't see your question there. You know, I never look at the Zoom chat, so we'll answer that next week on office hours, and talk to you then.
Happy New Year.
Thank you. Thank you.